Good evening, everyone. This is Dawn. Thank you for joining this webinar brought to you by ASQ Innovation Division. The topic of tonight's webinar is Virtual Innovation Game Flex Hurdles. Generating new ideas for solutions in a conference room can be challenging, but with good facilitation skills and a well-designed format, you can make good progress in a short amount of time. Not all teams are able to meet in the same room block. Virtual meetings are more and more common, and the distance between team members adds complexity to exercise that usually works well in the conference room. This session explores an idea generation activity using a virtual format and then takes the exercise to the added outcome of a prioritized list of actions for the team to pursue. The game is Flex Hurdles, and it is intended to get good ideas from a group of people in a short span of time. The learning objectives are use a new tool, Flex Hurdles, for new generation and prioritization, the confidence and ability to adopt a conference room exercise to a virtual environment. Please note that this webinar is recorded and the recording will be available on ASQ Innovation Division YouTube channel. Also, there will be 5 to 10 minute time after the presentation for questions and answers. Please post your questions on the Q&A section of the WebEx tool. Tonight, our speaker is Mr. Tracy Owens. Tracy Owens is a business transformation leader who has driven his employers and client organizations to achieve near-term objectives and better long-term results through innovation and quality management. As a founding member of ASQ Innovation Division, Tracy has promoted a growing body of knowledge on innovation management and brought our audiences a strong message about innovation as a process and not just a creative spark. He is the co-author of the Executive Guide to Innovation, which was published in 2013. Tracy holds a master's degree in international business from Seattle University, and he was elected to the 2016 class of ASQ Fellows. Thank you very much, Tracy, for accepting to be our speaker tonight. Now I would like to hand over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you to all of my best friends who are on the line in support of this endeavor. What I want to do, as Dawn mentioned, is adapt a conference room activity to a virtual setting. And this is something that I've really been anxious to do, very excited to, to test for a very long time. So I'm going to be counting on you. I will have you out of your chair. Well, normally I would say out of your chairs, but you can sit, stand, do whatever you like in the privacy of your own remote workspace, for the next few minutes. But what I want to do is give you just a little bit of a background in how this has evolved. If you've ever been if you on the phone have ever been in a room with me in the past, then you probably will have seen some of this. So I'll keep this brief, but I want to give you a little bit of a background how this evolved. As Dawn said, we sometimes will struggle to get ideas from somebody when we need it, a new idea for how to solve a problem or how to meet customers' unmet need. So in both improvement and innovation settings, exercises to generate good ideas in a short amount of time can be very helpful. And in addition, as Dawn mentioned, this activity will take the ideas and move them toward the next step toward execution, which is a prioritized list of themes or actions that you can use. So in a very short amount of time, you can get new ideas and actually start to sequence them or prioritize them for discovery or even for action. I believe there are two kinds of idea generation. There's the pull, where you, of course, the opposite is going to be the push. There's the pull, where you wait for somebody to have an idea and then make sure that when someone has an idea, you're able to pull it from them. That is, suggestion box, sensing session kind of pull. Wait for when someone has an idea, make sure that you're able to harvest it from them. Then there's also push innovation, which is when we have or push idea generation, which is when we have a particular problem or opportunity that we ask people to focus on that. Hey, we want to improve product JKL in the following way. What ideas do you have on that? So it's more focused and less wide open. The hurdles game is a little bit more geared towards some of the push, getting a specific response, getting an idea generated toward a specific problem. How this evolved is from an old game called Speedboat, the Luke Homan Innovation Games website. We used to play Speedboat. And to play Speedboat, you would put on a whiteboard or on a white paper, on a display space, a picture of a boat in the corner, and you would say, okay, here's the problem that we have, whatever that problem is. We're having a problem with product JKL, or we have a customer who expresses that they need, something that we don't offer yet. What can we do in that space? And then you let the group know that there are forces that will support, forces that will encourage or even drive that change, that idea, or the adoption of that program. And those are propellers, and I have a picture of a propeller behind the boat. There are also factors or elements that will slow down the adoption, that will decrease the speed with which we can move, toward implementing or initiating this idea. And those are the anchors. So we ask the group while we're there in the room, and the visual can be really helpful when playing Speedboat. We ask the group to come up with ideas that are supportive and positive, and also ideas that will present obstacles right there together. So as an example of what one could look like, this would be, I'm going to change the screen, picture of a Speedboat game, kind of a brief one, on growing better tomatoes. If someone said, hey, you know what, our tomato crops are not coming in very well. Our local, patio tomato crops are not coming in very well. What are some of the things that support local tomato growth? And those are the blue, the propellers behind the boat. And then what are some of the things that are standing in the way, some of the obstacles to growing better tomato crops? And those would be the anchors, and they're under the boat. So the visual is good. It's very positive in a room, in a conference room. But in thinking about this toward a virtual setting, in thinking about deploying this kind of activity in a virtual setting, I thought maybe a different visual would be helpful, because the next step in playing Speedboat is to organize these into themes. And so if I take these individual ideas, and hopefully I've given you long enough to kind of read what some of them are, you actually ask the group, I get the group in the room to move the sticky notes that are on the display space and move them together into themes. And so you'll start to see groups form, and they'll be blue and yellow. They'll be negative and positive. There'll be anchors and propellers. For instance, the rose tone and the fertilizer, go together as a theme. The ripeness, how to assess ripeness, by not picking too early and making sure that I can evaluate the ripeness. Those are themes. So you put those together and start to prioritize them for action, and that's fine, and it works okay on a with tangible, with movable sticky notes in a conference room. For this, I thought that perhaps a better visual might be above and below. And so what we've come up with, this idea is the hurdles. And you've got a picture of a hurdle, a crosshatched hurdle across the middle of the screen. And so in your virtual setting, you say to the group, here's the problem we're facing, or here's the unmet need that we have before us. What can we do that would be positive, and what kind of things are standing in the way? Those that are positive, we can call them boosters. Those ideas will go above the hurdle. And those ideas that are problematic, that are obstacles or standing in the way, we can call those trip hazards, something that's going to prevent us from getting over that hurdle. Hurdles, by the way, I've always referred to hurdles as the way to look at meeting a regulatory requirement, for instance, or a non-value added but necessary, kind of in some of that lean parlance, value enabling versus value adding, is the way to win a hurdles race is to clear the hurdle by as little as possible. So I've always talked about hurdles, and I thought the adaptation of this Speedboat toward hurdles, might be appropriate and might be helpful. I'm going to ask you to help me decide, if this is really useful tonight. So then I asked the group, what is it about tomato growing, for instance, that might be, a booster or a trip hazard? And then you got, the things that are in the way, overwatering, underwatering. And then I've got if I can use an automatic sprinkler, for instance, just as an example. And these will be spread out across the whole page. So what I want to do now, it's only 10 after, so we're doing okay. What I want to do now is get you involved in a hurdles exercise, What we're going to use for our sample today, and maybe you've been with me when we've talked about this topic in the past, but some of you probably have some thoughts on this. We're going to use buying an electric vehicle. Our topic for tonight is buying an electric vehicle, and I'll show you the display space where we're going to do this in just a second. What we're going to do is actually use not this WebEx screen, but we're going to use another application, Scrumbler. If you have ever seen it, this is a Scrumbler board, scrumblr.ca, scrumbler.ca. This is one, if you can see this on the screen, Dawn, I trust that my screen switched to the Scrumbler board. This is one that I created with a group of people several weeks ago, and it was about city government wanting to drive attendance at a public meeting. And we played the game My Worst Nightmare. We said, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, people go in order to, when trying to attract people to a public meeting. And we get these people, and they put these ideas on the Scrumbler board, and I'll show you how to do that. But then what we do is start to take them, read these as we would in a conference room. We start to read them right on the screen, and then group them together. So you can see on the right side, several people put a sticky note on the Scrumbler board that says nobody shows up, nobody shows up, no one shows up. So we group those together, as one possible thing that needs to be overcome. And you can see some other things on this board, that would be additionally, theme group topics. Sorry?
Sorry, Tracy. There is nothing on the screen. You should see something.
I was attempting to share, and I must have done it wrong. I'm going to, how about now?
Yeah, yes. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much. It was not as, I did it wrong. So this is the board I was talking about, and the great reveal, was blown by me. But now this, so here's the My Worst Nightmare, the Scrumbler board for attracting people to public meetings. You can see a lot of different things, earthquake, same 5 people that always show up. But then as I scroll to the right, here's a little group where several people wrote, no one shows up, nobody shows up, nobody shows up. So we can group those together, make the affinity diagram that we would normally do for a speedboat game. I apologize for the delay in the screen. So what we're going to do, and the way to add things to a Scrumbler board, and we'll do this in a second, is at the bottom left of the whiteboard space. Can you see where my mouse has gone over to this little plus sign? Yes?
Yes.
Great. When you click the plus, it gives you a new sticky note. And you double click and move it to a location that is suitable, right? It's very simple. So here's how we're going to do this. Now, if I go back to my green, are you seeing the green again with the slideshow? Yes. Okay, very good. I'm going to give you a URL to go to. And here it is. If you're able to, I don't think this is clickable on your screen. I don't think that kind of reach through the screen technology has come our way just yet. But if you can go to scrumbler.ca/hurdles925, hurdles9-25, then we're going to talk about buying an electric vehicle. And what I'd like you to put, I'm going to go back to my Scrumbler board. What I'd like you to put above the line, share my screen. Okay, so is it live now still? You see, Dawn, the one that says Hurdles Demo, September 25, buying an electric vehicle?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. So thank you. So I painted a little hurdle across the middle here. And what I'd like you to do is click a plus sign and give me a positive, something that would support buying an electric vehicle, and put it up here in the top half of the diagram. And then give me a negative, something that would cause you an argument against buying an electric vehicle, and put it down here on the bottom. And I'll give you a couple minutes to fill the space. Please feel free. Remember that the URL now is shown on the screen, scrumbler.ca/hurdles9-25. If you double click the sticky note, it enables you to type into it. Double click the sticky note and you can type right into it. Is this thing on? And then as you go, there are ways that you can use, I'll introduce the Scrumbler app, which is pretty cool. I'm going to put no more oil changes goes in the top. Just drag it right up to the top. Yes, very good. And as we go through, you can see this is, it's kind of a fun little display space. The pen and the eraser, they don't move. You can't write with the pen. You can actually click and drag them across the page, but that doesn't really do anybody any good. But the dot stickers, please don't go crazy with the dot stickers just yet, but the dot stickers can also be used for voting. You can drag a dot sticker to a certain sticky note. And so if we were going to do some sort of multi-voting, you could do that. Let's not pepper it with dot stickers just yet. But yeah, look for a couple more items. Let's go. Don't be bashful about filling the screen up. You can add, one or two items. If you have an electric vehicle, what was it that caused you to want to do it? If you don't have an electric vehicle, why not? Or when you were deciding to buy one, what were the arguments against? Yeah, very good. They need the charging, expensive, the kind of blank one there, and those. Let's keep going. Let's try to fill this up, because what we'd be doing. You picture this with your own remote workforce, right? You're coming up with some ideas for how to accomplish a task more efficiently, or how to innovate your process, not just your product or service, but your business model. What ideas can you come up with that would be helpful? And furthermore, I've always, run the hurdles game in the room, or the speedboat game in the room, to try to be efficient, get a lot of ideas in a short amount of time. And it would be great if you're talking about this while you're on the phone. But you could actually set up the Scrumbler board in advance. Right, you could set up the Scrumbler board in advance, and I don't have stock in Scrumbler. I don't know who, I don't know who Alicia or Elias Aria, is, or anything like that. I just know that it's really useful. You could set it up in advance, and people can contribute some ideas onto that board prior to the meeting, or even afterward a little bit, right, as long as they're still thinking of things. So while we're doing this, you get the visual, right, of the upper half being the positive and the lower half being the negative. So I'm actually going to pull out the blank hurdle labels and let the top half, still be the boosters, and the lower half be the trip hazards. You're doing great. Oh, now we're starting to see the popcorn popping a little faster. This is good. I have noticed a few free charging locations. I live in the city of Dublin, Ohio, and Dublin has a couple of free recharge stations set up around the city, specifically at the recreation center. But yeah, Whole Foods while you're practicing, while you're shopping. But you can see these, and one of the things that I never do as a facilitator, I just wanted to mention this also, one of the things I never do as a facilitator is say, who wrote this, right? Who wrote this one? Who wrote this one? While you're in the room with those sticky notes that are up on the board, to pull one down and say, okay, encourages frequent recharge breaks. Who wrote this one? Because part of the appeal of this activity in the room or in the virtual setting is the anonymity of the idea. You could put something up there that you maybe wouldn't necessarily want to say out loud, and you can do that even now. You could write something like, "It's just not cool. I don't want to be perceived as a granola eating tree hugger." Right now, I'm not trying to be offensive, but that's the kind of thing that you might not want to say out loud, but you could put it on a sticky note on a flex hurdles, on a hurdles space. Good. All right, we're getting there. Let me go for about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. Okay, all right. So I offended somebody, and I apologize sincerely. Granola eating tree huggers certainly are not a group that can be negatively generalized. It was for demonstration purposes only. Dawn, did we do an evaluation? I'm going to get bad evaluation scores now, aren't I? I'm just going to stop talking. Uh-oh, someone clicked the arrow. The shrink and enlarge arrow. That's another possible pitfall as well. Okay, so about 10 more seconds. Let's get a couple more ideas. I'm going to remove the trip hazards and boosters labels. So the only sticky notes on there are the actual ideas that have been contributed by the individuals. Notice also with the Scrambler board, one other reason why it's useful is you can go off the display space. We have a couple ideas that are down below it, which is perfectly fine. All right. I'm going to move on to the next step, which I'm going to show you here, and I'm going to ask you to help with it. So let's not, there's this one being worked on at the bottom, this bottom yellow one, is that one still being worked on, or is that a stray? There we go. So what I want to ask you to do is not add any more ideas right now. If we need to later, we can. What I want to ask you to do is take this to the next step. So far, what we've done is added some individual anonymous ideas to this board for why people would buy an electric vehicle or why people might not want to buy an electric vehicle. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Will you go back to the slideshow with me here for just a second? I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Where are we at? Back to the slideshow. Okay, so I'm going to, my screen should be showing this. You are on, if you're able to go back with me to this. What this is, what Flex Hurdles is, what this Hurdles game is, and the way that I have deployed the Speedboat game is a combination of quality and innovation tools. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this works, and I want you to be able to do this in your own workplace with your own team, if at all possible. First of all, are you back on the screen? Are we still? Okay. First of all, yes, the Speedboat game, right, is the first step, which is collecting many ideas from many people and highlighting the positive and the negative. We look for, you know, what are some ideas that are positive, that reinforce this change or this idea, and what are some that are negative? It could be standing in the way of full adoption, you know, of this change. So that's number one. The second thing, the second combined tool will be an affinity diagram. What we'll do is build groups of related items, affinity diagram style, and we're going to give each one a name for when we go to the next step. So what I want to ask you to do, I'm going to go back to the Scrambler board on my screen, and you can flip over to it also, is look at these items, read all these items, and if there are any 2 or 3 that say a similar thing, group them together. And the way to group something together is to just click and drag it and actually make it touch the other item. They have to be touching in order to be a group. I just moved better for the environment next to eco-friendly, and that now becomes the start of a group. So go ahead and drag items. Notice on Scrambler, one of the problems with it is whichever one came first is behind the one that came later. So try to change the order just a little bit so all of them are legible by just structuring them one in front of the other instead. So go ahead and move those around if there are any that you're doing great. I'm seeing these move. Good pickup speed, pickup's not the best, better performance, not race car fast. Try to drag not race car fast and move it somewhere where we can read the text. Maybe up above better performance might work. Or, yeah, somehow. Because the ones that went on the board first, they're going to be behind. That's the no more changes, save money on gas, can only go on short trips, encourages frequent recharge breaks. So what we have right now okay, this is good. I'm just going to drag this one here about the pickup up. Oops, where are you at? I'm going to take, I think I'm going to, yeah, there. I'm going to move this up here so we can read this one. Come on. Just a little fussy. There we go. Okay, so let's stop moving for just a sec. Let's stop moving for just a sec. Take a look at what we've got. Take a look at what we've got. There are some groups here of items, for instance, on the top right, not race car. Let's stop moving for just a sec. Let's just stop moving these items for just a second. Up here on the top right, we have not race car fast, better performance. I've heard pickup is not the best, and good pickup speed. Now, what you can see there are a couple of them that were boosters above the hurdle, and a couple of them that were trip hazards below the hurdle. That's a really positive thing. I'm going to show you why. Because the next, well, I'll go back to this in a second. The next quality tool that we're building while we're at this is really a force field diagram, a quality tool with which many of you are probably familiar. It is a way to identify supporting forces and detracting forces, things that are in support and things that are taking you away from success. So that's good. So this is a group that might be called performance or acceleration, something like that. So you would give this a name. So what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to do this real quick, is give this one a name by clicking the next one and sticking it right on top and calling it performance. Okay? So that is our new group title. Now, we're not going to get rid of the individual sticky notes, but that's the name of our group. But before we go further, I want to ask you about this top left one here. Eco-friendly, granola eating, tree huggers are cool, styling that looks good, and they are hip and cool. It supports innovation and better for the environment. There are some ideas here that are not the same. Could you please take a look at this group and see if it can be subdivided? See if that top left group can be subdivided. Good. Thank you. So what we're talking about here is the idea that it's possible, and this is an important point. In this exercise, it is still possible for some group think to set in, where people will say, oh, yeah, that's the same as that. Oh, yeah, this one's the same as that, and start lumping items together. It's possible that that can happen, and we want to control for that, because if we're going to try to overcome this, begin with the end in mind, right? If we're going to try to overcome these problems, eco-friendly and better for the environment is something we're going to discuss differently than good styling and hip and cool, right? We're going to discuss that differently. You know, the styling is a different element of the argument for or against buying an electric vehicle than how eco-friendly it is. So we definitely want to separate these out. On the bottom left, we've got the battery, you know, battery warranty, battery expensive, battery replacement, batteries and fire hazards. So that's kind of the battery family. We got the no more oil changes. I wonder if no more oil changes is the same as frequent recharge breaks and can only go on short trips. These two, if I move oil changes out for a second, these two are kind of more about, where's my plus, these two are more about distance, right, or range. Okay. So when I start to give these a title, here's expensive, right? And there's, okay, yeah, I can go to Whole Foods, but I can't go to Whole Foods because I don't have any more money because I bought my electric car. Sure. But now over here, this is the price category, right? So I give names to all these. What I want to show you, I'm going to go back. Please flip back with me to the WebEx while I go to back to the slideshow for a second. I thank you for using that Scrumbler board. I think you did a great job with that, and hopefully that's been eye-opening as something that you can use in your own workplace or your school or your church or wherever. But back on the slideshow, we started with Speedboat. We got ideas from many people. We got many ideas, and you could keep going, right? A lot more ideas about things. And this is something silly too. Buying an electric vehicle is just an example here for a Tuesday evening. When you start doing this for something that's important to people, you could get a lot more ideas and a lot more passion. The affinity diagram, then, we build the groups of related items and give each group a name, like we started to do there. The third tool, as I mentioned, is a force field analysis, where we're looking at the positive and negative themes in order to present counter-arguments. When you say, you know, the vehicle is expensive, well, the initial cost can be high, but you're not going to buy any more gas. And if you look back at your checkbook about how much you spent on, you know, gas, or your credit card statement, how much you've spent on gas over the last year, all that money goes back into your pocket, right? So that's kind of I'm not advocating or you know, arguing against electric vehicle at all. It's just something I think that promotes some pretty good thought and pretty good input. for a demonstration, but you present your counter arguments right there. The fourth tool we're going to go to now, if you're ready. The fourth tool we're going to go to now. Okay, good. Everybody's ready. Is one that doesn't get a lot of traffic, but it's called a clock diagram, a formal name interrelationship diagram. And by the way, if you are an ASQ member, this month's issue of Quality Progress Magazine has a feature on interrelationship diagram. It's deployed a little bit differently than I have done, but it's still a great way to prioritize. As I promised at the beginning of this, not only are we going to come up with ideas, but we're also going to prioritize them for action. Okay? And we're going to do that with a pairwise evaluation of these items. Okay? I'm going to show you how that works. So now I'm going to, are you back on the, no one's on the Scrumbler still, good. Okay, everyone's back here. What I'm going to do now is share the WebEx's whiteboard. I'm going to go to the whiteboard that I have. And what I did was populate this with a couple of the, please move away. Populate this with a couple of the ideas that we tend to come up with in a game like this, and indeed did come up with today. Initial price, range of the vehicle, environment, style. Sometimes cargo area comes up as well. So what I want to do, and do I have a, you know what, is there a hands up? I think there is. Is that on here, Dawn? Hands up, hands down? Oh, I'm not sure we can actually do that. You know what, this is going to be something where being able to speak would actually be helpful. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Is everyone seeing what I'm seeing?
Exactly, so I don't think.
Yeah, that's okay. So what I want to do is present how this would work. Because what we're going to do is for each of these items, this clock diagram is done in a pairwise comparison. So you start with the item at 12 o'clock, and we'll say initial price, purchase price. And you compare that individually, not to all four of the other items, but just one at a time. And so we start in a clockwise fashion by comparing initial price to the range of the vehicle, So we would say between these two, which is more important, or which argument do we have to overcome first, or which item, the success of which item will lead to success in the other, however you want to phrase it, but which one do we need to address first? And if it's if we agree that the initial price is the thing we need to overcome first, or we say the range of the vehicle is something we need to overcome first because people feel like they can't travel very far, so they're not going to pay that price, then we would say, which one of these do we have to address first? And at this point, I would open the voting, right? So I would go back. I can even go back to the we'll do this on the fly, Therese. Go back to the Scrumbler board, and let's say look back at your Scrumbler board or look at my screen if my screen is being shared. Is my screen being shared? Probably
your screen is the whiteboard.
Okay, it's on the whiteboard. Thank you, Dawn. So let's put voting stickers between range and price. Pull a blue sticker and vote whether you think range needs to be overcome before price, or price needs to be overcome before range. Take a blue dot sticker, blue only, dark blue. You just click and drag the blue dot sticker where you want it. You click and drag the blue dot sticker. Not the plus sign for the sticky notes. Those we're gonna be done with those. But click the blue dot stickers and vote for range or price. Got a couple votes on price. Now we're dragging these out. You can't drag the blue dot sticker if you put it in the wrong place. It is stuck there. Yeah, it's a little bit choppy. But let's say, okay, good. The votes are in. Range maybe wins by consensus. So I'm going to flip back to, and you flip back with me to the whiteboard. You draw an arrow. Are you back to the whiteboard yet? You draw an arrow to, here we go. Draw an arrow from price to range. And the one that gets the arrowhead is the one that takes priority. The one with the arrow, the one that has the arrowhead is the one that takes priority. Now I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly. If we said between initial price and environment that arguing in favor of the positive environment is something we need to do first. Style, people aren't really worried about as much as price. So price we have to overcome before that, and price trumps cargo area. Suppose we said it like that. we're done with the initial price comparison. We won't come back to that. We did a pairwise comparison among all these, so we move now to range of vehicle. Between range of vehicle and protecting the environment, people they love the environment, but practically they're more concerned about the range of vehicle, let's say. And the range of the vehicle versus how stylish and modern it is. Let's say the range is more important, and cargo loses to range also, right? So we say it like that. So if we, and I'm not the referee on this, I'm just doing this kind of expeditedly so that we can, use this as a demonstration. We're done with range of vehicle. So we move on to environment, and the styling, let's say, takes a backseat to the environment. People are more concerned about that than they are the way their Prius looks. And environment versus cargo area, let's say that environment also wins that battle. And then we're done with environment. So the last comparison is between how stylish it is and its cargo area. And let's say that style wins that one. The last thing we do in this exercise, right? So you can see there's a pairwise comparison with all. It looks a little bit, pentagrammic. I don't know. When you have 5, you're gonna end up with this shape. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to count. So we count the arrowheads. And initial price, the first thing that we had, got 2 arrowheads. And then the range of the vehicle got 4. It won all of its battles. Environment got 3. There's 3 arrowheads pointing into environment. Style, modern, got 1. Is that right? Did I have all these arrows? Yes. Style, modern got 1, and cargo got 0, okay? So you count the arrowheads, and the one with the most arrowheads is your top priority. So what we just decided, and if we had done this more interactively, what we just decided is that the most important argument that we're going to have to overcome for people to buy more electric vehicles is the range of the vehicle. Second most is we have to capitalize on how environmentally friendly they are. Then we have to address that initial price after presenting the other 2 factors. The style is 4th, and then the cargo area is last, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Isn't that spooky how that works out, right? The head-to-head matchups. And so there you have, if you did this with something that was important in your own workplace, then you now have a prioritized list, because sometimes it's possible for a group to say, where do we start? We have so many things that we want to accomplish, so many things we want to address. Where do we start? And there are a lot of ways to prioritize impact and effort, comparisons and voting, certainly, nominal group type multi-voting. But this one, I think, is just so clean and easy to deploy. The pairwise comparison between items, and then ultimately counting the full number. So if I go back to my slideshow, good. The clock diagram then is a pairwise evaluation of each of all the items, and then by counting backward from the the highest number of arrowheads. And I've done, and there are people on this phone right now who have been with me in a room when I've had 12 items on it. And we call that going full clock, full clock, when there are 12. We've had 12 and 13 items on, and it takes a long time to do that pairwise comparison, but at the end of it, you know what you have to do first. And sometimes it's not possible to start all 12 projects at once. So you pick the largest number of arrowheads and start the first 4, the first 5, and make the most out of your time and the resources that you have available that way. So just to debrief this really quickly, what I want to ask you is if in the chat window you can give me an answer to this question. In the chat window, give me an answer to this question. Do I have chat window capability? Dawn, between the two of us, I'm sure we have chat window capability. Yeah, participants. Tell me, why did I have you conduct individual briefings or individual brainstorming first? Why did I have you come up with your individual ideas first, right? And then the affinity diagram, what I have people do in the conference room is do it in silence. I'll give you the answer to that one. I actually tell them, let's move these items around the board, which we did tonight because that's the way the software works. But even in a conference room, I'll have them construct the affinity diagram by moving sticky notes in silence. And we do that to limit dominant voices. We do that to make sure that no one person is, or no small group of people are saying, this goes over here, this goes over there, case closed. You do it in silence so everyone has an equal voice. The positive and negative groups, we ask for those, the positives and the negatives, through force field analysis to give you a counter argument right there. We will not get rid of the original sticky notes. Those need to be preserved because they are the inputs. So things about Whole Foods, for instance, we don't want to lose that, right? Because those are specific arguments that might be able to help us later as we overcome people's resistance to buy electric vehicles. So we use those for force field construction. And in addition to other ways to prioritize actions, as I mentioned, impact and effort or multi-voting or executive guidance, executive priority. The clock diagram I've found to be extremely useful and expedient. I've used it in many, many settings. Hopefully you will be able to do that as well. And then the last question is one of the first things I mentioned. When you want to get ideas from a team of people, you can use this procedure both in an improvement setting and an innovation setting, meaning there's a problem that needs to be solved. So let's get people's ideas on how we can solve this problem and what is standing in the way of solving this problem. And also, when there is an unmet need among our customer base, this tool, this sequence of tools really, this program can be used to identify ways that we can overcome that unmet need and obstacles to us being able to do that. So that's what I wanted to share for this evening, and I wonder if there are any responses in the chat box. Dawn, I'm going to see if I can bring it up as well, to our first question about why conduct individual brainstorming first, and then also if there are any questions that anyone has about how this can be deployed. And I'll continue to talk while the questions are coming in. Yeah, here's a response on the first question. Why conduct individual brainstorming first? One of our answers is to have a wide range of ideas. Yes, if I just said on the phone, first of all, because since we're talking about a virtual setting, if I said on the phone, okay, who's got an idea about electric cars? Who's going to speak up? Who's going to be the first one to speak up, right? So people have, that anonymity, that quiet time to think a little bit. I might have put a little pressure on you because it's a Tuesday evening and we have only a certain amount of time. Why else did I ask you to conduct individual brainstorming with those little sticky notes on your own first? Why did I ask you to do that at the beginning of this process? Have a wide range of ideas? Yes. What else? Here's a response to see how many people say the same thing, right? See how many people, yes, that's a great answer. See how many people say the same thing. So there's a little bit of democracy in there as well. Another response is I need a lot of good ideas to get a good idea, right? A couple of, in order to, I think it was Linus Pauling, Peter Merrill always quotes, let's have, to get a good idea, start with lots of ideas, right? Some of them are going to boil out to be good. Another response, prevents intimidation by louder voices and personalities. Absolutely, do this in silence. That's a key to what we want to do is that everyone will have a safe, place to speak. I don't call out who wrote this. I never do that. But yeah, back to that question about, or back to that response someone sent in about democracy. If you had 16 people on the phone and 16 people all put a sticky note up there that says, maintenance costs too much. Well, that's pretty indicative that a lot of people are considering, that as an obstacle to buying an electric vehicle. And if you had 16 people and one of them wrote cargo area, we're not going to discard it, right? It's up there, but it was only up there one time, right? So you can see that. You can see right on the screen how many people have a similar idea to what you had. Good. Let me ask, I don't know if there's a separate panel for chat versus questions. Dawn, is there a separate one for?
There are two panels, one for chat and one questions and answers, but some people actually don't get, I don't know, apparently this chat window on their WebEx tool, so.
Okay. All right, so whatever is in, I have another chat response to what other ways are there to prioritize. Hopefully my screen is not crosshatched because I have this up here. Includes decision matrix, the House of Quality, another extremely useful quality tool that is powerful in an innovation setting. Yes, thank you very much for that. Okay, so looking at the Q&A panel, let me see if there are any, I can try to extend the size of this so I can read what I'm doing. Okay, yes. Q&A window, polling, but not a chat window. Yes, I'm sorry. I have learned something this evening, and that is that using an iPad or an Apple device, Apple handheld device for these for this type of activity, for the Scrumbler specifically, and maybe even for the WebEx, for the chat window. Some have a Q&A window but not a chat window. That might be an Apple obstacle, trip hazard also. But also the Scrumbler site apparently is not real compatible with an iPad either. So that might be something to keep in mind. It's not something I've ever dealt with before. I was always using a group on PCs or in a conference room to use the Scrumbler site. So yes, let's look for another. Organize your thoughts and prioritize. Absolutely. Don't sway others' opinions. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do this objectively so that no one clams up. If we put ideas up there and I say, who wrote this? This is a dumb idea. Or someone says, I don't think that's important out loud, you're going to get people sitting back, arms folded, not interested in participating. It has to be highly participative. So what I would love to do, gosh, what I should do right now, it's a quarter till. What I should do right now is do another one of these. I'm not prepared to do such a thing, but to do another one of these and say, okay, let's go start to finish with a full exercise like this. Maybe Dawn, another month, we'll do another one of these as well. Clock diagram, yes. Weighted mapping, interesting. I would like to explore that a little further. It's not a topic that I'm familiar with. Weighted maps, interesting. Perhaps the contributor of that might be able to type something into the Q&A box or the chat window that describes a little bit about what weighted mapping is. It's not something that I've pursued at all. And yes, we can apply the hurdles activity, this collection of these 4 quality tools in settings, in improvement and innovation. What other questions might you want to send? Here's a question that just came in. How do you ensure new information as required in the innovation is brought into the discussion when using this approach? So the question, if I'm reading this question correctly, is when you're in a hurdles game and we are at the phase where we're collecting ideas, on a board like this, right? How are we making sure that something new or adapted, something new to our setting is being contributed here? And I think my best answer to that, and I might have mentioned this a little earlier as an option, but I definitely recommend letting people know what we're going to be discussing in advance. Letting people know what we're going to be discussing in advance and not dropping it on them as a surprise, saying, okay, do you know why you're in this room today? We are in this room today to see what kind of ideas you have to get people to buy more electric vehicles. What do you got? Go. That can be a little bit limiting, stifling, to be able to say to that group, I need an idea right this second. As I mentioned at the very beginning, there's pull idea generation and there's push idea generation. And while pull and push have positive and negative connotations respectively in lean theory, pull is preferred to push. In idea generation, they're equally important and can be equally useful, but with push idea generation, where you have a specific problem to overcome or a specific unmet need to address, people need a little bit of time to prepare. So if you said, next Thursday we're going to have an idea generation session on how to encourage people to buy more electric vehicles, or how to address, the need for our customers who want more after-hours self-service. How are we going to be able to do that? Or we have a problem with too much warranty expense with product JKL. You know, how are we going to overcome that? You give people some time in advance to prepare, and then they're able to, and you know, some will and some won't, I reckon, but they're able to do a little research, do a little preparation, and bring in some ideas. I don't know if that's a thorough response to the question about how do you ensure new information is brought in using this approach, but the idea of giving people time to think about it in advance is one way. Another response, and anyone certainly is welcome to contribute a response to this question through the chat window also, is to prime the pump a little bit, right? You can also give some ideas. So for instance, you can provide some ideas in that pre-briefing where if you said, like that question that I talked about, what are some ways where we can have people, our customers have an unmet need. They want to be able to conduct self-service, you know, account maintenance after hours. How can we do some of that? And you could put in, even into that notification, for instance, one of our competitors has used robotic process automation, you know, for this type of work. Or at Disney World, everyone's favorite benchmark, right? Everyone's favorite benchmark for customer service. At Disney World, you know, they invented the Magic Band, which prevents people from having to dig into their wallets, you know. Could something like this be applied? So priming the pump can also be, you know, another way of bringing awareness and introducing new knowledge. What else has anybody? Let me open that. I don't have the chat window open. I have the Q&A window open right now. Chat. Okay, Dawn, what else do we have? I don't think I'm seeing more questions right now.
No, there hasn't been any question posted on the Q&A. So you can post your questions on the Q&A section of the WebEx tool.
I'm energized about this because I think this was not. There's some hiccups. For instance, the Apple usage, the voting with the dot stickers, I think was actually kind of expedient. That can work, especially if you are able to. The Scrumbler board gives you a series of colors that you can use. Because if I did price and range, I would want to make those dot stickers voted with with one color. Because then when I do price and performance or price and cargo area, I would want to use a different sticker. So different dot sticker, different color, just so I remember which comparisons there were. Because in the event of a tie, if I go back to my whiteboard space, in the event of a tie, for instance, suppose suppose environment. No, here we go. Suppose initial price. I can't make this go away. Let's move it over here. I can't make that go away either. Let me just try to doctor this up for just a second. Suppose that initial price actually took a backseat to style. And environment did not win. Environment did not win its head-to-head matchup with price. Okay, now you can see that instead of 3, there are no 3s. There's hold on, cargo area loses also. Yeah, let me just do this real quick. I'm just trying to make a simulation. Oops. Arrow. Okay, so suppose price and environment both got 2. All right, range of vehicle got 4, it's still the winner. But environment had 2 arrowheads, and initial price had 2 arrowheads. What's the tiebreaker? The tiebreaker is the arrow that went between the 2 of them. So you look at the arrow that went between initial price and environment, and it went to initial price. So initial price gets the star because it's slightly ahead of environment because it won the head-to-head matchup. You see that style got 1 arrowhead here. Style and cargo area got 1 arrowhead here. So the one between the two of them, was the tiebreaker, and it went to cargo area. The cargo area gets the one, the star. So those colors can be helpful also. What else? Dawn, we might be nearing an end if there aren't any more questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much again, Tracy, for your presentation. If you have any questions, you can post your questions on the Q&A section of the WebEx tool. And I should remind you that you can find the recording of this webinar on ASQ Innovation Division YouTube channel.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dawn. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your input, and you've really helped me to make this a more useful tool. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And if there is no question, I believe we can conclude the webinar event tonight. So thank you all again for joining this webinar, and have a good night.